I'm Brittany Lewis with Forbes Breaking News. At the weekly press briefing of Republican Senate leaders, Republican senators tore into President Biden over the ongoing baby formula shortage. Republicans are latching onto this issue roiling the Biden presidency, as baby formula remains hard to find across the country. President Biden has touted the expedited FDA approvals for foreign imports of baby formula, as well as new steps to reopen the critical Abbott Foods factory. Let's listen in to the Senate Republican press briefing.
Well, good afternoon. Obviously, the biggest issue in the world right now and the most important issue on the floor of the Senate this week is assistance for Ukraine. As I think you know, I, along with Senator Brasso, Collins, and Cornyn, had an opportunity to visit this past weekend with President Zelensky in Kyiv. I think I can report what you've already recorded over and over again, the determination of the Ukrainian people to defeat the Russians, to push them out of Ukrainian territory. All they're asking from all of us is help, and we're providing significant help this week. We're not in this alone. This is not a charitable operation. The European countries have contributed mightily, not only in absorbing refugees, but in providing arms and support in every way. This is also important to remind those who think we ought to be focusing on Asia that both the Prime Minister of Japan and the Defense Minister in Japan say the single most important thing we can do to push back against potential Chinese aggression is to help the Ukrainians defeat the Russians in this current conflict. President Xi is watching as this unfolds. What is the message he takes out of this? It needs to be that this kind of aggression is counterproductive and will not produce an outcome that you want. We then went to Stockholm and to Helsinki and had the opportunity to be there just as they were debating their decision to request admission to NATO. Met with the Prime Minister in Sweden, the Prime Minister and the President in Finland. Enjoyed witnessing their enthusiasm for this big step. To show you what a big step it is in Sweden, they've not been a part of any alliance in 200 years. So this is a big step for the Swedes to go in this direction. As you know, Finland also has declared a kind of neutral position in between Russia and NATO. They're enthusiastically anxious to be a part of NATO now. Another outcome produced by Vladimir Putin's aggression. Both of these countries, however, being wary about the Russians over the years, are extremely well prepared to become part of NATO now. Finland already spends 2% of GDP. Sweden is rapidly approaching 2% of GDP. They both have highly successful militaries, much more successful militaries than some of the current members of NATO. So they are value added to the NATO alliance. What they're curious about is how long will it take us to ratify their admission, and I told them that our goal on an overwhelming bipartisan basis would be to get that done as rapidly as possible. Some procedural hoops through which we have to jump may prevent us from being first, but I'd love to be first, and we're going to do everything we can on a bipartisan basis to push admission to NATO as rapidly as possible.
There isn't a day goes by where we don't seem to see a new spike, or a new high, I should say, in gasoline and diesel prices at the very same time that the president's approval ratings hit new lows. I don't think that correlation is any coincidence. The high fuel prices in this country are attributable to this administration's policies, many of which have discouraged oil and gas production, energy production right here in the United States. Most recently is last week when the President took the Gulf and Alaska, some of these leases off limits, shut them down. It absolutely makes no sense if you're concerned about the pocketbook pain that the American people are experiencing on a daily basis, the higher prices that they're experiencing at the pump. You would think you would be working aggressively to try and open up more energy production in this country, but this administration seems intent on doing just exactly the opposite. And that has been their plan from the beginning. If you look back in the very earlier stages of this administration, whether it's oil and gas leases on federal lands, and even if they, in some of these places where they're issuing leases, you have to get a permit to drill, which they're not doing, or forcing long delays. It's just been an example of delays, shortages, and constantly higher prices for everything in this Biden economy. I would hope that the administration would think seriously about revising their strategy here, because at the moment, all it's doing is making the American people and the American economy harder for more working class families in this country. The latest example, of course, of the shortage is the baby formula shortage. And again, these are just basic issues that this administration, when it comes to taking care of the basic needs of the American people, seems to be completely out of step with. And I think the only thing, honestly, that's going to change that is a Republican majority in the Congress. And I hope that as people think about these issues as we head into the midterm elections this next fall, they're going to be thinking about those pocketbook issues, those issues that affect their economy and their family's economy in a very direct and profound way.
Today is the 8th day in a row that gas prices in America hit a new high today, $4.52 a gallon. That has profound impacts to people all across the country, specifically in my home state of Wyoming, where people on average drive more because the distances are further and the average miles driven is higher. Joe Biden seems committed to a long-time situation of high gas prices all across the country. If not, why does he continue to choke energy production in the United States? Just last week, he canceled 3 major lease sales, oil and gas, in the Gulf and in Alaska. And he can't have it both ways. When the president one day says it's Putin and the next day, the very next day, cancels these major oil and gas production leases, the American people see through this. The president has lost all credibility in terms of dealing with inflation or the cost of energy. At the same time, the American people have lost all confidence in the ability of this president to relieve the pain that they are living with every day. For people driving past a gas station and they see that number over $4 a gallon, most people wince because they know it's money that they're not going to have for food and groceries, for clothing, or to do things with the kids. And then the president has this big gimmick where he's going to release 1 million barrels of oil a day from the Strategic Petroleum Reserve all the way up till the election. Well, that has had no effect in relieving the pain at the pump. The only thing he's done is make us more vulnerable if a real emergency comes along, because that's what the Strategic Petroleum Reserve is for, real emergencies. The American people know we have the energy in the country. It is in the ground, and this administration will not let us get it out. This president is beholden to the climate elitists that call the tune for the Democrat Party. And that is why I say this president is committed to high gas prices for the long, long future, which is why 3 out of 4 Americans this weekend polled said they believe the country under Joe Biden and the Democrats is heading in the wrong direction.
Well, with the baby formula issue, another example that hits a whole other group of American families that often aren't thinking about the big economic issues of the day, of just making a decision without thinking about the consequences. Since about January 1, the FDA knew that there was potentially a problem at one of the big manufacturers of baby formula. About 60 days later, they shut that down or negotiated a shutdown of that factory. They've still not established up until today the likelihood that the factory and the problem they were trying to solve were the right factory. But more importantly, you can't eliminate maybe 40% of the supply and not have impact. I was talking to somebody the other day who spent 4 hours in the car, went to 6 different stores to try to get the unique baby formula that their baby had to have. Talk about stress for families. You know, you can look at things, $28 million, I think, is what the House is talking about now. Whether it's $28 million or $228 million, it won't make any difference tomorrow. Won't make any difference probably a week from tomorrow. Looking at every option before you make that decision, like eliminating tariffs on Western European baby formula that meets all our standards, would have been something that the administration could have easily done months ago before the shelf supply in store after store after store went away.
Our American families are really feeling the weight of all of these Biden crises. We have the prices at the pump that Iowans are feeling, very hard hit, the highest inflation we've seen in 40 years. And now the Biden administration just seems to have lost all control over things just as simple as baby formula. Who would have ever thought that we would have a shortage of baby formula right here in the United States? I got a text a couple nights ago from a friend in Iowa, and he was imploring me because a young couple that he knows had a preemie baby, and that baby is being released from the NICU very soon. And mom and dad are struggling to figure out where the formula is going to come from for their newborn baby. You know, these are things that could have been foreseen, things that the Biden administration could have planned for and encouraged the FDA to work through. So I understand that Abbott and the FDA have an agreement to reopen their plant to produce baby formula, but the courts have to agree as well. So what are we to do in the meantime to support and help these families that need this baby formula? This is not some ordinary product that you can live without for a number of time, a period of weeks. When you need it, you need it. So whether it's importing from those other countries, as Senator Blunt had stated, whether it's solving our supply chain issues, or just something as simple as opening a plant, we need to do it. You know, these babies are in need, and we shouldn't be turning our back on these babies. So again, implore to the Biden administration, let's get these crises under control. Let's put some people in place that actually know what they're doing when it comes to supply chain management issues. We shouldn't be facing the type of inflation we are, the gas prices we are, and we certainly shouldn't be facing a baby formula shortage.
So across Florida, I'm getting texts, I've gotten phone calls of parents that are struggling. They're spending hours to try to find formula, and some of them can't find it. They're trying to figure out, can I take their baby off of formula and put them on milk now? And some parents are having to do that, and they know there might be some risk with that. You can't imagine that in the United States of America, parents are worried about feeding their children. Now, this is an American problem. I can give you pictures from all over the world. This is Panama. They've got plenty of baby formula. And this is the United States. No baby formula. I can give you pictures from Canada, from Israel, from other places, Brazil, all over the world. There's plenty of baby formula out there. The Biden administration needs to figure this out today. They need to figure out, they need to have all hands on deck. This needs to be solved this weekend. It can't be 2 months and wait until after the Abbott facility gets open. They've got to solve this now because parents are worried about feeding their children. I'm from Florida. We have a lot of people from Latin America. The Biden administration decided to be appeasers again to Cuba and Venezuela. That's despicable. We got nothing for this. After the Obama appeasement, let me give you one story. A lady had her hand chopped off right here, stuck in the mud. This was after Obama's appeasement. And you know what she did wrong? She complained that a school was being closed in Cuba. We're getting nothing for this other than there's a less of a chance that Cubans and Venezuelans are ever going to see democracy.
You've long said that you want electable candidates to emerge as Republican primaries. Does Kathy Barnett's candidacy in Pennsylvania, Kathy Barnett who's denied the election results and criticism of her past statements, does it give you any concerns, and would you fully support her if she's a nominee?
Well, Manu, you're a pretty astute reporter. The election is today, and we'll take a look at it after we see who the nominee is.
Do you have any personal responsibility as a Republican leader to speak out on replacement theory, which is apparently one of the things that motivated the shooter in Buffalo, and which some of your members and candidates have talked about it to some degree?
Well, certainly the episode, this horrible episode in Buffalo, is a result of a completely deranged young man who ought to suffer the severest possible penalty under the law.
Leader McConnell, Senator Manchin says that the old Manchin-Toomey proposal to expand background checks is the only gun control proposal that could possibly pass the Senate. Do you see 10 Republican votes for Manchin-Toomey or any other gun violence measure?
Well, I'd love to be the majority leader. Hope to be after November, but that's a better question to ask of Senator Schumer.
Biden said today in Buffalo that the U.S. must reject the lie of racist replacement theory. Specifically, does the Republican Party need to reject it?
Look, the racism of any sort is abhorrent in America and ought to be stood up to by everybody, both Republicans, Democrats, all Americans.
Leader McConnell.
Yeah.
Is it your belief that Democrats are seeking amnesty for undocumented immigrants for the purpose of influencing and changing the electorate and giving themselves a political advantage?
What I'm disturbed about with regard to the southern border is the relative openness of it. This administration's taken a number of steps in the direction of just throwing our border wide open once again, and that ought to be addressed. It's something that could be done by the administration itself in the absence of any additional legislation, and keeping Title 42 in place would be a good first step.